I get to interview you now. And I'm hoping that my phone doesn't drop too. And
oh my God, well, otherwise I'll just sit here and talk to myself.
If it does, you'll interview you. So we'll, at least I know you can do that. So we're going to be talking about, for people who have just maybe joined, popping in and out real quick, I want to do a recap. And I'm sorry now, you see my house, you don't see RuPaul. It's not as fun, but we'll roll with it. We started out going actually back a little bit to this morning. You and Brem were having a conversation. Brem is the CIO over at MAD, and you guys were talking about adopting new technology within an organization and his perspective as a leader who, often purchases technology and has to drive that change management. So you guys, us, now that I'm part of the team too, we just came out with our tool guide, our annual digital tool guide. And you've been working both, you had time spent at a nonprofit organization a long time before starting Firefly, and you've helped countless organizations adopt new technology and go through the process of what do I need? How do I buy it? Who do I talk to? I think this is a topic that's really big on people's minds right now because they are having to think through new digital things, like we were just talking about with Mike, maybe I want to do this Twitch thing and this virtual live streaming thing. And so let's talk a little bit about how do you even get the process started to purchase a new technology for your organization? What are some of your tips there?
For those folks who have been on since this morning, Brem and I touched on some of these pieces, but I think a big one is starting to take an inventory of the tools and platforms that you're currently using, because I think in some organizations, sometimes it's shocking that you don't realize that another department has actually already purchased something and is currently using something that you might find useful as well. And some pieces of that functionality might serve your team well. Maybe you don't even know that it's there. Another one that we find is, really, really getting deeper on what are you actually trying to accomplish. There's a lot of I should do this or I should do that. What are the goals you're trying to actually reach? How do you want to get there? Is it a new piece of technology you need to, or is it sort of just using the tools that you currently have differently? But I think it's important to chart out sort of your goals, mapping your current ecosystem, really understanding what you have, and then sort of being okay, we don't currently have, then you can sort of see the gaps. Okay, we don't have a tool currently in our organization that will help us do X, which we think will help us achieve Y, or reach new audiences, get on different channels, be out on different platforms, or engage in a different way, really be effective in virtual potentially. We don't have that currently, but it's important to at least stop, take a breath, assess, and talk to different departments in the organization, because I can't tell you how many times we engage with the development team or the marketing team or whatever, and they haven't actually talked to each other first and realize that either there's something already there, or kind of go deeper on the tools that you have, because you kind of go, oh, I didn't know this. Because obviously all these software platforms, I'll give you guys all a shout out if you're on, they are iterating their platforms right now as fast as they possibly can. So even though you thought, oh, my tool doesn't do that, well, maybe it didn't do that last year, but you may not realize you missed some release notes. Maybe they've just built in a new integration with something, or they are trying to push out, the ability to do live streaming or whatever. Just make sure that what you have isn't already going to, meet the criteria, because it's a whole lot easier to stay put and, do it on the tools you have than actually have to move. But that's probably the first thing I would say. And then really think about, okay, then you identify there's a gap. Okay. It's a process, first of all, then be real about what the process is going to look like, and then kind of talk it all the way up to your organization. Like Brem was talking about, we were talking about, maybe there's a central point of contact, or your CIO, your CTO, your tech team, even all the way up to your CEO, and even into your board, to say, hey, we've identified a gap. We've got a need. We're going to need to adopt a new piece of technology. I need to get some budget approved for this. And I hear you. It is a challenging time to ask for budget to use towards new technology. But again, thinking about costs that might be saved right now, if you're not holding that in-person event, I need to repurpose funds that would have been going to this, or I need to still put out a plea for, I need to adopt a new piece of technology so that I can do more effective virtual fundraising to actually help us recoup some of the costs we might be losing in this space. So don't be afraid to ask, put it out there, but be specific, because the more pointed the ask is, the better, it's going to be received by those having to sort of make decisions about where the budget's going in this crazy time that we're in. Those are some.
And budget is a big thing right now, right? And so we've got one question that came in is, a lot of these tools are very expensive. I definitely think that there are a lot of tools now that come in all different price points. So if you've evaluated tools in the past and been, had sticker shock, there might be some new options that are out there that are within your price range. And particularly now, because a lot of the platforms, particularly around online fundraising, are offering some really sweetheart deals right now, to be honest, to help organizations in this moment. And so I think there's some options. We can send those to you. Yeah, Fundraise Up is a good one. There's a lot, and we have some that are going to be joining us here in this 2-day event that I think have some very reasonable pricing, and we have a lot of those outlined in the guide too. So.
Yeah, I mean, we put together our guide, and that's just a couple. I mean, we just outlined a few. I think you, Taylor, said there's like 7,000 platforms or something that are digital marketing.
There's 7,000 marketing platforms in the world, something like that. It's a crazy chart. It's a lot of logos. It's hard to look at, but yeah.
Right.
It's crazy.
Before you even start looking at platforms, yeah, it's like, okay, wait, do we have something now? What's the functionality that we're missing? Do we actually need that? Again, how do we think about this smart? Just like, oh my God, I need to adopt, blah, blah, blah. I need to go get.
For sure. And there's a lot of platforms too. Mike Smith, we'll give a shout out to you too. A lot of them are offering no cost startup fees right now as well for online fundraising. So we'll put together, we'll send the guide out to everyone, and then we'll put together a list too of just all the options that we kind of see that are out there at those lower price points. So good stuff. So Jen, I like what you said about going into it with clear goals. Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about, okay, you have your platform, you've purchased technology, or maybe you've even reevaluated what you currently own and haven't used. How do you get the most ROI out of your technology and the tools that you've bought?
Well, I think it's important to think about the move as well. Like, I think I can't understate again, back to the planning and the timing of this, as we talked about even with Brem too, like, what's it look like? And when you're thinking about the ROI of a new platform, you have to also think about that the user costs and the training costs and the ramp up time, and sort of wrap that into your costs of the platform, not just what does the software cost, but what is it going to take to sort of move me over, clean my data, get my assets rebuilt, all those pieces. And so you think about, okay, what's my year one actual total cost on this? It's going to be more than the sticker price of that piece of software. So a lot of those soft costs that we were talking about, those soft impacts that you're thinking about, it's like, okay, make sure you're thinking about that. But it is about like thinking about the ways you've been using the current platform. And then you're kind of like, oh, I'm excited. It's like getting a new car or something. Like, oh, I've got fancy new features. And you're like, am I ever going to use it? I mean, that's probably the most important thing to really think too when you're actually looking at that piece of software. Like, that seems really amazing. And you've got these fancy demos that are happening, and I'm not, I see them. I'm like, oh, that sounds amazing. Is my team going to have the capacity, to do all those fancy things? Is that worth, that purchase? Am I going to incorporate that? And I think right now what we're probably going to see is, really focus in on what are the ways in which you think you're going to need to use the tool differently now than maybe you were using your platform before, and really be sure that the tool that you do choose has sort of some of the kind of new features that you're looking for in our new space. But in terms of trying to get a ROI, is it going to make it more efficient? It's probably one of the bigger things you can be looking at too. Like, is this somehow going to streamline processes that right now we're doing manually? And I will tell you right now, one of the biggest considerations in that space is how well does it integrate into the current tools that I have today? Like, am I creating a new data silo? And so here's a platform. It's got a lot of cool features, but it's kind of over here and it doesn't integrate well. And so I'm actually by adopting this new piece of platform, a new piece of software, I'm now creating a bunch of manual steps for someone to have to do now that they didn't have to do before. So it's kind of a nice idea to say, great, I'm going to incorporate blah, 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 blah. But like, now, what are the actual, again, what are those impacts you're actually making on your team? Am I creating new manual, time-consuming processes, or am I actually taking the time to find the platform that has the features I need that will actually integrate and move my data in an automated way? So I don't have to go in and now I'm creating a bunch of manual or processes that are out of sync because I got this data pile over here and now this data pile over here. So I can't stress the importance of integrating data so that you can say, great, my fundraising platform's over here. I want to make sure I know who has been making those donations or coming online and doing live streaming, whatever those events are, and then making sure that data is captured so you can use it for your next level of segmentation. So if it's just kind of floating in space over there and then you have to manually push it over, that actually impacts your ROI a little bit in a negative way. But it's a balance because you're saying maybe I'm reaching new audiences and raising all sorts of new money that I wouldn't have been able to. If there's a little bit of a manual process that goes with it, I'm willing to take that on because I'm opening myself up to new opportunities and reaching new audiences like on Twitch. You wouldn't necessarily reach the same type of audience if you weren't actually in that Twitch space and interacting with the gaming audience as much. Maybe it's going to be a manual process to get it back. Incorporate that into your thinking and into your ROI calculation. So making sure you know how it's integrated, if it can be, maybe it can't be today, and maybe that's a goal. But to think about how to get that data over. So you're seeing a 360 view of all of your constituents and what they've actually done, what they've participated in is incredibly important so you can engage them properly the next time and continue to sort of nurture those relationships appropriately with the context of where they have been sort of interacting with your organization in those various channels.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you said about the integration is really important when thinking about ROI. I'll paint a metaphor. I like to think about, what are all the different lakes that you need to go fishing in, right? There's a lot of fish in a lot of different lakes, and some of them are connected by rivers. So I grew up in Austin, and there's a bunch of lakes in the Austin area. They're all essentially the Colorado River. And they're connected in some way or another, and they've been dammed off and whatnot. And in the case of your data, there's connections, right? Maybe it's a river and there's a connection, but sometimes there is a lake that's got a lot of good fish in it, and you want to go fish there, and it's worth looking into. So that gets me into my last question for you on just what are some of the additional things to consider when looking at features and functionalities of various platforms. So integration we talked about is a big thing. What else would you say needs to be number 2, 3, and 4 on that list?
So I think a lot of people obviously price shop, and I think that sometimes can be tricky. And I think when you're thinking about price, it's really important to think about what is included in the price. So I think there's a lot of sort of what sort of support goes with the pricing point that you're seeing. Do you have unlimited phone? Is it just email? What kinds of support and how much do you get? And including how much does the team help you get set up and running? I think a lot of times there's a sticker shock with the software, and then there's a little bit of sticker shock of getting set up and actually running on this platform is a bit of a task, and somebody is going to have to help me do that. I would say don't underestimate the benefits, I guess, of being with a guide, with a live person actually helping you get set up, running on the platform, and not just being I'll just watch the tutorials, I'll just watch the videos. Sometimes, and that sometimes works, but think about incorporating and what kind of live, are there weekly chats with the software person? What kinds of ways can I interact with the team itself ongoing? And then what is there? Do they have a lot of videos, tutorials for me to access? Is there a library? Is there a big help file? Is there a community of users that I can kind of tap into when I get stuck on this new platform? Those are all super important considerations above and beyond the functionality. What am I going to get? What am I not going to get? The integrations and sort of that initial price point. you can't underestimate the value too of like a really active, strong, vibrant user community that you can tap into and ask questions to. Really critical. And just how available are the folks at the software team to be available? What kind of ongoing support do you get with them? And I would also stress sort of the when you're doing all those demos and you're talking to these various teams, just really real. What sort of interaction are you having with that team during that process? These are you're dating these people. If they aren't whining and, if they aren't showing up and being their best self and being really personable and real and authentic and caring to you, then once you sign the contract, I hate to say it, but a lot of times the relationship at that point, then you're a user group. So how's the interaction there? And then again, talking to that user group, get a real sense of what it's like to be a member of that user group community interacting with the software team. Like, how is that support ongoing? What is it like to actually be, in the queue then? Like, does it take forever? Are people really responsive? How is it, working with now the customer support team versus the sales team? Like, they're different teams generally at software. So you might get along really well with the sales team, and that's great. But what's it like? Talk to other users of the platform to really see what it's actually like on a day-to-day basis, and kind of think about that support environment, because you can come and you can talk to folks at Firefly, you can talk to whatever. There's a million agencies that can help you use the tools, but your primary relationship is still almost always going to be with the software team and their support team. So make sure you feel comfortable and know them, and maybe even during the sales process, try to get a sense of what it's like working with them and sort of get them involved in the process as much as you can, because they're going to be your lifeline ongoing using this. And then obviously your community of users out here are all the nonprofits who use that platform. It's good to get real, talk with people, and don't just talk to the users that the software team sends you. Go find your own, because obviously I'm not, telling tales out of school, but a software team is gonna be like, I want to send my best customers, obviously, to prospective customers. Of course you do. We all want to hear how amazing it is, and most of them have plenty. But every once in a while, there's some, I want to talk to folks who've struggled, or maybe an integration didn't go as well as you thought it was going to go or something. Dig a little deeper and sort of just find the real stories, because every tool has got them. Every platform has got them. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway too, is every platform has their I don't want to talk, I don't want to show this, or they've got their little hidden secrets or their little dark corners, or like, don't talk to so-and-so. That one went really bad. We've all done it. We all know it. It's not as I can't talk about integrations we've done that have gone poorly, but get those stories out and hear it and then go, how did you make it through that? And is the relationship good now? What was a tricky spot? It's like if you're interviewing a candidate for a job, you have to say, what was a time that blew up in your face at your last job, and how did you handle it, and how did you get through it? Make the team at the software company talk about when they really screwed something up royally and how they made it right, and how they got through it. Because that's when, again, you see what somebody's really made of, is when they can get through a difficult, ugly spot. And everybody's got them. And so make sure that sort of comes out, and it's not just it's rainbows and kittens and everything is amazing. And know that when you get there, there's always gonna be oh, I wish I did this other thing, or I really wish I had this. No tool does it all. Just be clear with yourself and have those expectations set appropriately when you move. Technology isn't going to save us, but it can help, and it's never.
It can help. Yeah, for sure. Like you said, I mean, it is sort of exciting. You get a new tool. It's like getting into a new car, like you said. And, sometimes I still find little buttons in my car where I'm like, what does that even do? And you have to go exploring. I think it is important, as you said, I'll just reiterate this, to really look through with a really good lens on what it's like working with an organization through the sales process. How transparent are they about their mistakes, I think is a really good thing to call out. And I'm glad you called that out, because everybody does make mistakes. No technology is perfect. No agency is perfect. No consultant is perfect. No person is perfect, right? But it's how you address the challenges that can really show you a lot. The last big piece of software that I purchased as a marketing leader, I developed a very good relationship with my salesperson. We like text each other all the time now. We're like best friends because he was so transparent with me and just very real. And we forged a relationship. And I think that's not out of grasp for anyone. I think that you can ask for it. And the way that people act through that process will tell you a lot about what it's going to be like, as you said, post implementation. All right. Any final closing thoughts, Jen, before we take our break?
Yeah, I think that there's some, I wouldn't underestimate the impact, I guess, that a tool migration has on your team, like we talked about with Will a little bit, and sort of really be real about how long it's going to take. And then it's going to take probably even a little bit longer to get fully ramped up on a tool. So give yourself some grace. Again, be kind and just be planned and thoughtful about like, when do I actually really want to go live, and really kind of roll it backwards from there and be conscious of like impact on whoever's going to kind of be your lead inside your organization. It's important to have a lead inside your organization of who's going to run this project. It's a project. Who's going to run this project? Who is going to dedicate 10 plus hours a week to this project over a year? Let's be fair to do it. So have something bigger before you even get started. Identify that person and really think about the process.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, be realistic with that process too and that time frame, because you're not setting anyone up for success if you try to like paint the rainbows and the butterflies like, oh, this is just going to be magic and we're going to have our new website in 3 weeks. No, you might, but it might not be that good. So do you really want to do that? And that's a conversation to have and to set realistic expectations with your team, have a leader, all of that stuff.